Formula 1 world champion Max Verstappen has a monster new Red Bull Racing contract that's the longest on the grid and could well be the most valuable. After winning the 2021 title in dramatic circumstances in Abu Dhabi, Verstappen declared there's no reason to change teams and that he wanted to stay with Red Bull forever. A new deal to 2028 might well be the start of that. Verstappen's Red Bull contract was due to expire at the end of 2023, but it was expected he would sign a new one before the start of the 2022 season. That has now been done, with a new 5-year deal on top of the existing contract, committing him to Red Bull until the end of the 2028 season. Yes, that's right, 2028. Yet Verstappen has called this an easy decision because he says he loves the team.
Yeah, I think the decision was quite straightforward. I think from both sides, we wanted to continue, and from the start I felt really good in the team, and especially after last year, I only saw one way forward, and that was with this team.
The new deal means that Verstappen has comfortably the longest contract of any F1 driver. Having made his first start for Red Bull Racing aged 18, he could still be driving for the team into his 30s. More than half the grid is theoretically out of contract after this season alone, with only a handful believed to have deals beyond 2023. McLaren's Lando Norris recently signed a new long-term contract keeping him there until the end of 2025, with Ferrari Charles Leclerc, Alpine's Esteban Ocon and new Alfa Romeo signing Valtteri Bottas all on deals running until the end of 2024. Red Bull team boss Christian Horner said it is a real statement of intent to have committed to Verstappen for so long. He emphasised the part Verstappen plays in the team's long-term planning, alongside the new company building its first ever Red Bull F1 engine. Verstappen's new contract should take him into F1's new engine era that begins in 2026, and Horner said that this contract has ensured Red Bull has the best driver on the grid locked down for that.
I think it was very important for us to have continuity. We've always been a great believer in continuity, and I think having Max for the long term through the transition into 2026 with those new regulations as we become an engine manufacturer and supplier, it's fantastic for us to have Max committed for that transitionary period.
Unsurprisingly, Verstappen will be rewarded handsomely for this. The new deal could be reportedly worth up to €50 million a season, a chunky increase on what he is believed to have earned previously. If true, it would put him among the world's highest paid athletes, although fewer personal endorsements may still leave him trailing behind 7-time world champion Lewis Hamilton. There's a sense of irony in this mega new deal, given Red Bull senior advisor Helmut Marko was one of the advocates of an F1 driver salary cap and had used Hamilton's earnings as justification for that. But the deal reflects the change in F1's financial landscape. With the cost cap in place but drivers not included, teams that can afford it must invest more in the one remaining unrestricted performance differentiator, the driver. Red Bull has traditionally opted for highly incentivised contracts with big bonuses on top of a base salary. Verstappen would have had a bumper 2021 given his success: 10 wins, 10 poles, 18 podiums and of course the title. Wanting to bump up his numbers is understandable though, and there's no doubt that Verstappen's in the strongest possible position to have done that, so it makes sense for him to capitalise on Red Bull's adoration and his value being sky high. We're not naive enough to believe that Verstappen driving for Red Bull Racing is an absolute hardline, unbreakable agreement until the end of the 2028 season. There are bound to be clauses that allow Verstappen to leave after a certain point, or if competitive requirements aren't met. In the past, Verstappen's contracts have had exactly this. During 2019, Red Bull's first season with Honda, Verstappen was said to be free to talk to other teams if he wasn't third in the Drivers' Championship by the summer break. He then signed a new deal ahead of the 2020 campaign, and that agreement, which is the one running to the end of 2023, had its own specific clause. It was only 1 year ago that Horner said, "All drivers have safeguards within performance, and the reality is that has always been there. There is an element of performance related to Max's contract. It's just a binary performance at a certain measurement in time. As with all these things though, to force a driver that doesn't want to be there, it's more about relationships than contracts. You only pull a contract out of a drawer when you've got a problem." It seems impossible that something similar doesn't exist this time round as well, especially given the length of the deal. But even though it's a year old, Horner's point from 2021 is valid. If you're leaning on clauses to break a contract, something's already gone wrong. Doing a deal that runs through to 2028 is a sign of the sentiment that exists between the two parties. Verstappen has been with Red Bull since partway through his rookie car racing season in European Formula 3 in 2014. He picked the Red Bull Young Driver programme because it was able to promise an immediate route into F1, and he made his F1 debut the following year, aged just 17, with Toro Rosso. Verstappen has driven for Red Bull Racing itself since famously winning the 2016 Spanish Grand Prix on his first start for the team. Last year's title success made him Red Bull's second world champion after Sebastian Vettel, and ended a run of 7 seasons without a championship for the team. Red Bull technical chief Adrian Newey hailed Verstappen as the real deal and right up there with the very best drivers in F1 history. Horner said Verstappen had grown up with Red Bull, and Verstappen declared his love for the organisation. These were emotional statements made in the heat of the moment, but you can still believe their sincerity. The Verstappen-Red Bull relationship is very strong. It's just unlikely to be completely immune to the realities of F1. We've made an entire video about that, so we won't dwell on that for too long here. But if Verstappen even comes close to seeing out the duration of this contract, he would easily clear the record for race starts with a single team. Hamilton's currently on 178 for Mercedes and poised to take the record from Michael Schumacher, who made 179 starts for Ferrari. If Verstappen makes 23 starts per year to the end of 2028 though, he'd sail past both onto 279 with Red Bull, and he'd still only be 31. It's not impossible by any means, and Verstappen as a Red Bull lifer is at least a credible concept. But the fact no other partnership comes close to that, even ones that have been ultra successful, had strong sentimental value, or both, is at the very least a warning that all good things come to an end at some point.